Care Chats. Care Chats with Tanya, Mark, and Nick. Care Chats. Care Chats with Tanya, Mark, and Nick. Grab a mug of care and join us for some Care Chats with Tanya, Mark, and Nick.
Yes, please.
Nick and I are here with Dean and Dean Spade, and we were interweaving Dean's most recent book with the Venus being in Aries for the next 5 weeks. And we were talking about what does it mean to liberate love, to liberate our connections, and how can we sprinkle. Dean was throwing in some sprinkles of how we can do it in Aries ways. Dean, do you want to add what came up for you around how to sprinkle some Aries vibes?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that kind of like Aries as like this place of initiative, and maybe these images of like being a warrior, and thinking about that in Venus, like being warriors for liberation in areas of like love and beauty, especially right now when things are really so hard. And it's such a profound time to know what we believe in and what we don't believe in and what we oppose, and to, especially in the context of like this fascism moment where so many institutions are like complying in advance, like knowing that you actually stand for something, being willing to break a rule or a norm to stand up for it personally, or at our jobs or in our families or wherever we are, or on the street when we're seeing something happen. Like there's some kind of like strength, I feel like almost like an uprightness, an initiative in the context of Aries, and in a time when we could be encouraged to like zone out and like escape through entertainment and like fantasies about a personal life through, having the right body or the right relationship. There can be a kind of real invitation to to seek comfort in delusions that don't actually deliver happiness or wellness, when right now is really, I think, a moment of like a call to like collective action and to personal emotional awareness, so that we really follow like what we know deeply rather than the stuff we're being fed.
Mm-hmm.
We were also talking a little bit about bringing Buddhist concepts into this, and something I just thought of as you were sharing about being a warrior, and especially about Venus and Aries. I think about like the Dharma protectors from Tibetan Buddhism. And for those who don't know, Dharma protectors are sort of deities or helping spirits, helping guides that protect the Dharma, the teachings of Buddhism. But one of their primary sort of attributes is fierce compassion. So how can we bring fierceness and compassion into that way of loving ourselves, loving others, being in the world, fighting for us, but not from a place of like anger and hatred, but as a way of like, we're going to be protective here. We're going to stand up for justice and what is right, and cut through the BS, cut through the oppression, cut through the ties that bind both internally and externally. And so, that's what sort of comes to mind to me, is how can we bring in those qualities of fierce compassion for ourselves and for others?
Especially because everyone's doing so poorly right now. Like, I just think like people in our communities are not well. Like the executive orders are like extermination orders for trans people. It's like, it's terrifying how it's like their family members are being deported or fearing deportation at higher levels than ever. It's already been really bad. And, just so many things are happening. And so I love that you're invoking compassion. Like when we call people and they don't call us back, or when people are grumpy at the meeting, or, I've been leaning a lot on the Buddhist idea that everything is imperfect, everything is impersonal, and everything is impermanent. And can I remember those things when I'm irritated with myself or others, or like impatient for my healing, or, thinking of writing someone off because of our last interaction? Like, can I be like, this probably isn't personal. I don't know what's going on with them. This probably is, impermanent, like the feeling I'm having right now of feeling scared because they didn't pay attention to me, or whatever the thing is. And we're all imperfect, and every situation is imperfect. And like, can I already go in knowing that and be more forgiving?
Yeah, I thank you both for naming compassion. It also makes me think of the medicine of meeting people where we're at, right? And that even like impersonally, my family is navigating an unexpected death. And even in meditation this morning, I was thinking about Anne And that's an additional layer because we have what's happening in our collective, and every single one of my family members has their own personal journey going on as well. So, in looking for compassion and grace and understanding, it's like it's how do I find places to meet people where they're at with love, right? And so what I was sharing with Nick was what came to mind was a very indigenous practice of bringing fresh herb bundles to each family member, right? There's ways of communicating things. I think ways of, how do we love in times when we can do so in maybe ways that don't always involve, traditional talking. It can be through action. It can be through, so those ways. So I also feel that that's another liberated way of looking at love, because I come from a family that maybe just wants to talk, 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 talk. And that there's not a lot of space for silence or let's go for a walk and be in nature, which is very indigenous to where we come from. And so I can bring that now that I am living in this decolonized way of life. I can share that and model that for my family. And I feel like that very much like aligns with, what your book is saying. Like who cares, like not who cares where we come from, it matters, but we don't have to subscribe to it.
Mm-hmm. I love what you're saying too, because I've been doing a lot of workshops for people about how to support like trans and immigrant students on campus and things like that, just like how to, and one of the main things I worry about, there's certain things we can't do anything about. There's certain things that are happening in DC with a government that does not care about us, but you can take very immediate local action. One of the things I spent a lot of period of this workshop talking about is how to respond to people in crisis with caring messages, because that is actually what researchers have found is one of the main ways to prevent suicide is caring messages. And like that's so profound because all of us, you're talking about bringing the herb bundles, like just doing kind things for one another, messaging someone even if they don't message you back, if you think they might be feeling isolated or in trouble. Like, of course, there's a deeper level too of like, developing in our own communities non-carceral responses to mental health crisis, which there's really wonderful resources out there about trying to make sure people don't end up when they're in crisis like locked in a cage or dealing with police. But there's just some kind of like thing like not letting each other go, not letting each other wander off during a difficult time, keeping the ties as much as possible, being generous in that way, even if someone can't reciprocate right now. Like I really want us to watch out for isolation in one another during these kinds of conditions.
A good moment to take a breath. Ooh, I knew. A shimmy, a shake, a stretch, lots of medicine, a lot of energy being shared. So maybe finding some movement in the body, taking a moment, taking a sip of hydration. Lots of beautiful, beautiful Venusian vibes being shared and connecting the dot to, this beautiful book that you've put together, Dean, that's out there. The timing, it feels like timing, divine timing, with where we're at. So
I hope it can help people. I mean, my intentions with it are really that I hope that people can, I wrote this book in part because so much of the self-help literatures that are out there are so individualizing of our problems and take them out of the context in which they're happening and kind of reinforce relationship norms that I think are really like capitalist and racist and ableist. But what I'm hoping it can do is be a book people can look at and feel a gentleness towards themselves and others about the fact that we have these kind of patterns of behavior that can lead to a lot of pain, and that like we can see that they're not ours. We can be like, that's not me, that's not mine. And what do I want? And how do I want to align my values with how I act relationally, and not be pathologizing of ourselves or others that it's not that way now. That's my real hope, especially in these like incredibly intense times when people are trying to do really hard stuff to take care of one another and to stop, genocides and wars and extraction and colonialism. It's like we don't know how to do that perfectly. And how do we be really kind and relational and forgiving and gentle, and as we do the kind of fierceness that Nick was talking about, the fierce confrontations that are required. But like kind of a vibe of like, of course I'm like that. Of course, this other person is having that response. Of course, we don't know how to do this yet. Of course, we have to learn by practicing.
I really like that you brought in this word that you've said a couple times now, gentleness, which is interesting because, we're talking about like, how do we be a warrior? How do we be fierce, but then also how do we be gentle? And I think there's a delicate balance with that. And I think that for me and also for like the clients that I work with, sometimes it's about like starting with the self. Like there's this way that because the world is so harsh on us that we become harsh on ourselves. And it's like, how can we be gentle with ourselves? And I'm sorry to keep bringing it back to the Buddhist practices, but these are, some of the key components that I use personally and in my work. One of the most powerful things that I think people can do is practice loving kindness. And I know particularly in a lot of Buddhist circles, the emphasis is on sending loving kindness to other people. But what I see is people have a harder time sending loving kindness to themselves, which is, being gentle, being compassionate, being kind.
Yeah, noticing the inner voices, like just even noticing how we talk to ourselves. And if it's, for a lot of people, it's a mean parent or mean teacher, mean sibling's voice that got stuck in there. I mean, it's interesting. I'll say I've had years and years of just practicing metta towards myself because I'm a huge shame monster. So I really have to do that work. And I also had experiences where metta towards myself was, it would prompt a response of no, because it was so opposite of how I felt right then. So then I had to find a different, even gentler, even like don't force the hand of loving kindness towards myself if that's not available. Like there's something about, and also when you say that, it makes me think about like most of us are either overly rigorous or insufficiently rigorous in different areas of our lives. Like I'm insufficiently rigorous about my bedtime, but I'm overly rigorous about like thinking I should never do this or, and so it's interesting to notice like, where am I practicing with too much rigor or with insufficient rigor, and just slightly moving the dial, and even asking friends to help us assess, like, where am I kind of hard on myself that I might not be noticing, that kind of thing. Oh, right. When I'm speaking about metta, that's just another word for the loving kindness meditation that Nick was mentioning, which is often done through phrases. Like people will do a meditation where they say over and over again, may you be filled with loving kindness, or may I be filled with loving kindness, may you be happy, may you be well, those kinds of phrases. And I've worked with some teachers who've had us move away from the phrases and instead use images, which really helped me. So I would imagine something like the image of myself floating in Lake Washington where I live, because that's something I associate with a certain kind of like peace and self-care. Whatever was in, I would imagine myself smelling a fragrant rose, because I'm like, when I do that, I am filled with loving kindness. Like trying to use a more embodied practice. There's so many ways to do this Buddhist technology of invoking and practicing beautiful feelings and states that we want to have more of, like compassion and appreciative joy and equanimity and loving kindness is just one of them. And what's cool about the times we live in is there's like a million people putting like awesome practices like this on apps and YouTube and stuff, so you can like flirt with what appeals.
Yeah. I love how you both are really emphasizing like the loving kindness, compassion from the inside out, right? Internally and externally. And I want to add to that algorithm the importance of being creative, right? And how being creative is also an act of liberation and love, right? That when we're creative, a lot of times in the folks that I work with, I'm like, believe it or not, like old languaging coming in. Shoo. Like the invite is to explore the idea of that when we do things that light us up, it sends healing frequencies, not just through our system, but it also can emanate healing frequencies out to our world. And so that when we are doing those types of things, the art, the beauty, the smelling the flowers, the journaling, the doodling, the whatever it might be, the cooking, fill in the blank, that is a form of love to ourselves and to our systems. And it is a huge response to what we're currently navigating. We just come from systems that don't provide that as a set of instructions or invitations. So I think in these, with Venus being in Aries and Neptune in Aries, there's that invite to get highly spiritual, highly creative. And I really love offering that reassurance that is just as potent as it is to look at, to look at shadow, to navigate wounds, to navigate. So I'm curious how you all are being creative and in that way, and what kind of liberation are you finding through creativity and beauty?
I have to say, when I love what you're saying, and when I think about it, something I think about a lot is the relationship between accessing like grief and like other difficult feelings and being able to feel joy. And I feel like right now, because the onslaught is so overwhelming, people can go into numbing. And I sometimes see myself do it. Like I've started to only I listen to the Democracy Now! Headlines every morning, and I've started to try to do it with somebody else around. Because I'm like, this is actually an intense, sacred moment. Like we're hearing a list of the names of the dead. Like we should not, like, so I'm trying to hold the grief and terror and anger and rage, all the feelings that these times and all of our lives provoke, so that I can feel the pleasure and joy. And I've had this experience a couple of times when I've been on like long silent meditation retreats, where I've many times where like the slowing has allowed me to like experience some kind of relationship to beauty that was before unknown. So I often am doing this like in Joshua Tree, and I'll see like the sand like sparkle, the way that like just because it's just sand, and I'll just feel like, oh my God, I like evolved. I am like a being who evolved on Earth to perceive this beauty. Like, wow, all the things that had to happen to create a being that is made of this planet that can perceive this beauty. Or I feel that this morning when I was on my walk and smelling the newly blooming roses here in Seattle. I just want to name that for me, when things are as difficult as they are right now and as overwhelming, people we love are just in so much danger. And I feel that it's especially important to connect to like the most basic pleasures of being a human, and like, where am I able to notice beauty? And you kind of have to sometimes like remind the noticing, because I think there can be a numbing habit that's really understandable survival technique, but it starts to take away both ends of the spectrum, like not feeling the pain and then not feeling the pleasure and beauty and connection.
Yeah, I know that you've talked about numbing a fair amount around these practices, and I think that what you're naming, Dean, and maybe what you're asking, TanyaMarck, is, what are the things that we do that, as far as like being creative or recognizing beauty, either creating beauty or recognizing beauty, right? As a way of self-regulation, and I think that numbing is a form of self-regulation, but it's unconscious self-regulation, right? So how can we bring consciousness, what I really love what you said, Dean, like you want to listen to the news, but you don't want to do that alone, so you're co-regulating with another animal body, another human being, while you do that hard thing, or that thing that could be hard or triggering. But then you're also choosing to consciously like say, I'm going to go and consciously not pay attention to the things that are hard, so I can resource myself by recognizing the beauty of the, floating in the lake, or looking at that sparkle in the sand, or like TanyaMarck, making these herb bundles, or being in the garden, or myself creating art. And I'm not going to talk about it again, because I've talked about it a number of times in the last few conversations we've had about my art practice. But yeah, being able to titrate that, as opposed to unconsciously just avoiding and numbing out until like the news just comes rushing in without you consciously deciding to take that in. So how can we bring consciousness and awareness to noticing the things that feel hard or triggering or scary, and asking for support in those moments, and then seeking support to regulate and not pay attention? And it's okay to like take a break. That's why we sleep. we need rest. So
I think also because this is a queer podcast, we have to talk about sex.
Yes,
I mean, I just was thinking about how like it's such an important time to have
Yeah.
sex with ourselves or others, or to have like sensuality or affection with our friends of any kind. Like, and I think that's like a long queer wisdom, is like, get in the streets and like meet someone to fuck at the protest and like,
Yeah.
be like just being alive, being like, we are still alive. I was thinking about Miss Major, the trans elder who so many of us revere, and she's like, I'm still fucking here. Like that is, we
Yeah.
are here right now. We are here, and we don't know, with ecological crisis and stuff, there's really, really difficult feelings about survival that are really accurate and scary. And how can we be like, while we're alive, I will feel aliveness, which means feeling the pain of seeing what's, the starvation in Gaza, and feeling the pain of seeing extraction projects, and feeling the pleasure of my body and other people's bodies and the plants. And you just, like, can all of this is true right now. This is how it is now. It's all of these things. Like for me, that's a deeper equanimity practice, is that phrase that some Buddhists use for equanimity practice. This is how it is now. I say that to myself all the time. I'm like, part of that is let's update. Let's not be, I don't want to be living in a memory I have of how things were before that makes me not notice how things are now, or not react accurately with the people I'm with now and the conditions now. And part of it is appreciation, and part of it is grief. It's like, this is how it is, like with grieving, like I'm thinking of your family, TanyaMarck, like, wow, this is how it is now. This person lived with us in this way, and now they're with us in a different way, and like not with us in this other way. And like, this just like, it's just so hard to be in reality sometimes, especially when we don't see the same people all the time, and some stuff is happening far away. And I just like, I crave that. That's like, for me, the deepest idea of liberation is like being responsive to current conditions, not being under spells of the society or my own trauma given me of confusion, like how is it now? And how can I be with others and myself according to my values as it is now?
Yeah, thank you for, of course, bringing in queerness. Hello, like we got to sprinkle that in here, and how just the importance of us honoring queerness in whatever iteration can also be. It's a form of liberation. It always has been a form of liberation, right? And thank you to those who came before us who didn't have the tools that we have today, that, found ways to continue to honor their queerness through, tons of iterations of erasure and all the stuff that's happening. I think that finding ways to honor queerness, you know what I mean, and liberating ways, to be honest, for me, it can be through music, right? And movement, where like, I just need to fucking get queer and get weird. Like, and that to me feels like also very responsive to what's happening, or get fucking punk rock with it. That's the whole beauty of that. We were kind of talking about, like, I kind of, feel that Dean's title of his book should be in punk rock, like a punk rock, some lyric, and that is so vital to our care, right? And to liberation, as well as to honor, who we are, and honor who others are as well. So yeah.
Let's take another breath. So maybe as we start to wind down, we can just bring in some gratitude to all these things that we've invited in and invoked, the energies of Venus and Neptune and Aries, Buddhist principles and practices, to nature and art and queerness and sexuality, loving kindness, compassion, joy, fierceness. Anything else? Am I missing?
Grateful to you all for making this podcast, and for giving people all this juicy, beautiful stuff to consider. And I imagine it's supporting a lot of people through hard times right now to have this. Thank you for making it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing some time with us, Dean. And to our listeners, Dean, I'm going to do this in honor of this beautiful book. I'm going to do it, y'all. This is what I've been hearing in my mind. So y'all grab a copy of Dean Spade's book, Love in a Fucked Up World, How to Build Relationships, Hook Up, and Raise Hell Together.
I would buy the album. I would buy the album right now.
Thank you for sharing some care time with us, Dean. And everyone, grab a copy of any of Dean's books. They carry such potent medicine. Don't forget your mug of care. Hydrate, move, shake, shimmy, continue to ground and clear and be with community, y'all.
Care Chats with TanyaMarck and Nick.